A billionaire's world is all about control and perfection, until he watches a humble black waitress let his disabled son take the lead in a simple dance step. That moment shatters his rigid worldview, challenging everything he thought about strength, leadership, and love. What happens next will change his life forever. The story begins with the world of Jonathan Reynolds, a billionaire father whose life is defined by precision, control, and immense wealth. A self-made man, Jonathan built his empire from the ground up, transforming from a modest background into one of the most powerful figures in the business world. His personality is sharp, commanding, and often unyielding. Every aspect of his life is meticulously planned, from the boardroom decisions to the carefully curated image he presents to the world. Control is his comfort zone. It's what made him successful and what keeps him at the top. His home is a fortress of luxury but also of strict rules and expectations. Jonathan's son, Michael, lives under the shadow of this imposing figure. Michael was born with a physical disability that affects his coordination and speech, challenges that isolate him not only from the world but from his own family. Unlike his father's dynamic and driven nature, Michael is quiet, shy, and hesitant. The gap between them is wide, filled with unspoken frustrations and misunderstandings. Jonathan struggles to reconcile his son's limitations with the vision he had hoped for. He wants Michael to be strong, to succeed, and to fit into the high-powered world he inhabits, but Michael's struggles make that seem impossible. This has created a distance between them, a barrier that leaves Michael feeling alone even in the midst of his family's wealth. Into this story steps Simone, a black waitress working at one of the city's finest luxury restaurants, a place where the Reynolds family frequently dines. Simone's life couldn't be more different from Jonathan's. She grew up in a modest neighborhood, learned early on the value of patience and kindness, and carries with her a quiet resilience shaped by years of hard work and overcoming adversity. She is known among her colleagues and customers not just for her professionalism but for her genuine warmth and empathy. Simone sees people, not their wealth, status, or disabilities, and that perspective allows her to connect with Michael in a way no one else has. The luxury restaurant itself serves as a microcosm of this story's contrasts, a place where power and privilege are on full display but where moments of genuine human connection sometimes break through. It's here, amid the polished tables and elegant chandeliers, that the worlds of Jonathan, Michael, and Simone collide. The setting is not just a backdrop but a symbol of the divisions and bridges between them. It's a place where appearances matter, but where true strength and kindness will soon reveal themselves in unexpected ways. As the Reynolds family settles into their usual corner table, the air is thick with Jonathan's usual expectations, of perfect service, flawless presentation, and a smooth evening. Michael sits quietly beside his father, watching the world with wide, cautious eyes, his body tense with the effort to fit in. Simone moves gracefully among the tables, her smile a beacon of calm and understanding. Little does anyone know that a simple, gentle gesture from Simone will begin to change their lives forever, opening the door to healing, acceptance, and a transformation far greater than wealth or power could ever buy. Jonathan Reynolds' world was built on control, power, and high expectations, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. As the head of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, Jonathan had no room for weakness or mistakes. Every decision he made was calculated, every outcome carefully managed. His life revolved around discipline and results. This relentless drive had propelled him to extraordinary heights, but it had also shaped his personality into something rigid and often unyielding. At home, Jonathan's controlling nature was even more pronounced. He believed that success came from willpower, strategy, and toughness, qualities he valued above all else. This belief naturally extended to his son, Michael. Jonathan expected Michael to embody strength in the way he understood it: confidence, self-sufficiency, and an ability to take charge. But Michael's disability, which affected his motor skills and speech, made this an impossible expectation. Jonathan struggled to reconcile the son he wanted with the son he had. Jonathan's expectations weren't just high, they were uncompromising. He had envisioned a future for Michael that involved leadership, achievement, and standing tall alongside him. The reality, however, was different. Michael's challenges meant that he needed patience, support, and understanding, traits Jonathan found difficult to muster. This created a gulf between father and son that grew wider with each passing day. Underneath this struggle lay deeper prejudices Jonathan wasn't fully aware of, biases shaped by his upbringing and social environment. Coming from an elite, predominantly white business world, Jonathan had internalized subtle but pervasive attitudes about race and class. To him, people like Simone, the black waitress, belonged to a different world, one far removed from the polished corridors of power where he operated. He viewed her, consciously or not, through a lens shaped by stereotypes. Someone less refined, less capable, less deserving. Jonathan's biases weren't limited to race. His perceptions about disability were also colored by societal misconceptions. He saw Michael's vulnerability not as a unique strength but as a limitation, a weakness that reflected poorly on the family. This made it difficult for Jonathan to accept his son's needs and the different ways Michael experienced the world. Vulnerability was something to be hidden, overcome, or fixed, not embraced. His prejudices affected how he treated others too. Staff at the luxury restaurant were expected to be invisible, efficient, and deferential. Jonathan demanded perfection, and any perceived failure was met with impatience or disdain. For someone like Simone, whose warmth and kindness didn't fit the cold, transactional expectations of his world, Jonathan's attitude was distant at best, dismissive at worst. Yet beneath Jonathan's harsh exterior was a man deeply afraid of losing control, afraid of failure, and afraid of confronting the parts of life he couldn't command. His inability to accept Michael's vulnerability was also a fear of facing his own limitations as a father and a man. The constant pressure to maintain his image and authority made it harder for him to open his heart or mind. This complicated mix of control, prejudice, and fear set the stage for the transformation that was about to unfold. Jonathan's world was solid and impenetrable, or so he thought. But sometimes, the smallest moments have the power to crack even the hardest facades. The soft hum of the upscale restaurant buzzed gently around the Reynolds family's table. The gleam of crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow on the polished mahogany, while the subtle murmur of conversations and clinking silverware created a refined, yet lively atmosphere. This was the kind of place where Jonathan Reynolds felt in control, a place where everything, from the lighting to the service, was orchestrated to perfection. But amid the glittering ambience, Michael sat quietly beside his father, his body tense with unease. Unlike Jonathan, who navigated the room with confident purpose, Michael's movements were cautious, uncertain. His disability made even the simplest actions challenging, and tonight was no different. His eyes flickered nervously across the room, avoiding attention as best as he could. Simone, the black waitress, noticed this hesitation immediately. She had seen many kinds of people pass through these elegant doors, some brash, some aloof, some kind. But there was something different about Michael. His shyness wasn't just nervousness, it was a palpable vulnerability. Simone's heart softened, and she quietly resolved to do whatever she could to make him feel safe. As she approached the table to take their order, Simone's gentle smile met Michael's wary glance. Instead of focusing on the usual polished professionalism, she made a subtle effort to connect. "Would you like to try something special tonight?" she asked softly, crouching down just enough to meet his eye level. Her voice was warm, patient, without any hint of rush or judgment. Michael nodded slightly, encouraged by the kindness in her tone. Simone sensed the moment was fragile, but also filled with possibility. After serving the family and ensuring everything was perfect, Simone returned carrying a small portable speaker she kept tucked away, her secret tool for moments like this. From it, a soft melody filled the space between tables, a slow, gentle rhythm that was impossible to ignore. Looking toward Michael, she smiled again and extended her hand, inviting him with a quiet confidence. "Would you like to dance?" Michael's eyes widened in surprise. He looked toward his father, whose expression immediately tightened. Jonathan's discomfort was evident. The idea of his son dancing in public, leading even a simple step, unsettled him deeply. But Simone's invitation wasn't about performance or spectacle. It was about connection. She slowly stepped back, allowing Michael to take the lead, to find his own rhythm in the moment. At first, Michael hesitated, unsure how to move. His body stiffened as he tried to recall the few dance steps he'd learned long ago but had never felt confident enough to try. Simone stayed still, giving him space, radiating calm. Then, something changed. With Simone's steady gaze and unwavering support, Michael took a small, tentative step forward. He led a gentle sway, the first in a long time where he felt free rather than constrained. Jonathan watched, conflicted. His initial instinct was to pull Michael back, to stop what he saw as an embarrassing or awkward moment. But as he observed his son's face, lighting up with joy and pride, something inside him shifted. The rigid control he had clung to softened, just enough to let him see beyond his fears. The room seemed to quiet around them, the noise fading into the background. The dance step wasn't just a movement, it was a bridge, between Michael and the world, between father and son, between different lives brought together by a simple act of kindness. Simone's role in this moment was quietly powerful. Without fanfare, she had created a space where vulnerability was met with acceptance and strength was measured not by power, but by courage. Jonathan's emotions swirled: confusion, pride, a deep-seated hope he hadn't dared to admit. For the first time, he understood that true leadership and strength might not be about commanding others, but about allowing those you love to lead, even in small ways. That night, as the music played softly on, a billionaire father's life began to change, one gentle dance step at a time. The soft glow of the restaurant's chandeliers faded into the background of Michael's mind as he left that night feeling something he hadn't experienced before: hope. The simple act of leading that gentle dance step with Simone was not just a fleeting moment of joy. It became the catalyst for a deep and lasting transformation within him. 4 years, Michael had lived in a world that seemed designed to highlight his limitations rather than his abilities. His physical disability made everyday tasks challenging, and the emotional weight of feeling different from others had often kept him isolated. Even within his own family, surrounded by wealth and power, Michael felt like an outsider. His father's high expectations and rigid standards had only deepened the chasm between them, leaving Michael to navigate his struggles alone. But after that evening, something inside Michael began to change. The dance was more than movement. It was a quiet declaration of his capability and a reminder that joy could exist beyond the constraints of his disability. When Simone took his hand and allowed him to lead, she gave him something priceless: a chance to believe in himself. In the days and weeks that followed, Michael's confidence started to grow in subtle but meaningful ways. At school, he found himself participating more in class. Where he once shied away from group activities, he began to raise his hand and speak up. Teachers noticed the shift. Classmates who had overlooked him began to see him as someone different, someone who had a voice. Michael's newfound confidence wasn't about perfection or meeting others' expectations. It was about embracing who he was. He learned to celebrate small victories, finishing a difficult assignment, making a new friend, or simply smiling without fear. Each success, no matter how minor it seemed, built upon the last, creating a foundation of self-worth that had been missing for so long. The bond between Michael and Simone deepened with time, blossoming into something beautiful and transformative. Though Simone was his waitress at the restaurant, a place that symbolized luxury, privilege, and, sometimes, exclusion, outside of work, she became his friend, mentor, and cheerleader. Their conversations were filled with encouragement and understanding. Simone listened patiently as Michael shared his fears and dreams, never once treating him with pity. Instead, she saw his potential, his strength, and the kindness in his heart. Simone's influence on Michael extended beyond mere friendship. She taught him that disability was not a barrier to happiness or success. She encouraged him to focus on his abilities rather than his limitations, to find pride in his unique perspective and experiences. With her unwavering support, Michael began to imagine a future where he was not defined by what he couldn't do but by what he could. Their connection also challenged the social and racial barriers that often divided people in their world. The luxury restaurant where the Reynolds family dined was a place of strict social hierarchies, where differences in class and race were often magnified by privilege and expectation. Simone, a black woman from a modest background, worked in service. Michael, a disabled boy from a wealthy family, occupied a very different social space. Yet, through kindness and genuine human connection, they found common ground. Their relationship broke down stereotypes and assumptions held by many around them. Simone's warmth and acceptance created a safe space where Michael could be himself without fear of judgment. And Michael's openness and gratitude showed Simone the power of hope and resilience. This quiet defiance of social norms did not go unnoticed. Some of the restaurant staff, who initially viewed Michael through the lens of his disability or family status, began to treat him with more respect and warmth. Customers who overheard the gentle encouragement between Simone and Michael felt the soft impact of their bond. It was a reminder that humanity could transcend walls built by race, class, and ability. Jonathan Reynolds, Michael's father, was forced to confront this change as well. The rigid expectations he held for his son began to crumble in the face of Michael's growing confidence and happiness. Jonathan saw a side of Michael that he had never really taken the time to appreciate. A young boy capable of leading, of inspiring others, of expressing joy in his own way. Though Jonathan struggled to express it, the transformation in Michael softened his heart. He realized that his son's strength was not measured by conventional standards of success but by his courage to be himself despite challenges. The dance moment with Simone had opened Jonathan's eyes to the power of empathy and acceptance, a lesson that would eventually reshape their family dynamic. For Michael, the impact of Simone's kindness was life-changing. It gave him the courage to step into the world with a new sense of purpose and pride. It showed him that he was not alone, that he was worthy of love and respect. And it reminded everyone around him that true strength lies not in wealth or power, but in the ability to connect, to understand, and to uplift others. In the end, Michael's story became a beacon of hope, a testament to the transformative power of kindness and the breaking down of barriers. Through a simple dance led by a compassionate waitress, a disabled boy found his voice, his confidence, and his place in the world. And in doing so, he changed the lives of those around him forever. Jonathan Reynolds was a man accustomed to certainty. His life was governed by rules, discipline, and an unwavering belief in control. Success, in his mind, was the product of effort, willpower, and mastery over circumstances. For decades, this mindset had served him well, building an empire, commanding respect, and maintaining an unshakable presence in both business and family. But that evening at the restaurant, watching his son Michael take the lead in a simple dance with Simone, something inside Jonathan began to unravel. The image of control he had built so carefully started to crack, revealing doubts, fears, and truths he had long avoided. In the quiet hours that followed, Jonathan found himself reflecting deeply on his beliefs and biases. He realized that his rigid expectations had not only burdened Michael but had blinded him to the beauty of his son's unique strengths. He had judged Michael by standards rooted in his own fears and social conditioning rather than accepting who Michael truly was. Jonathan's biases extended beyond his son. His views on race, class, and ability had been shaped by a world that often equated worth with status and conformity. He recognized now how these prejudices had limited his relationships and distorted his understanding of those around him. Simone's kindness had been a mirror, reflecting the narrowness of Jonathan's perspective and the possibilities that lay beyond it. This self-awareness was the first step toward transformation. Jonathan grappled with discomfort and humility, emotions foreign to a man used to commanding respect and control. Yet, the more he reflected, the clearer it became that change was not only necessary but inevitable. He began to observe Michael with new eyes, not as a project to be fixed or a disappointment to be hidden, but as a young person with his own path, strengths, and dignity. Jonathan started listening more, speaking less, and allowing space for vulnerability, a radical shift from his previous stance. Jonathan also took deliberate steps toward humility in other areas of his life. He engaged in conversations about race, disability, and inclusion, topics he had once dismissed or avoided. He sought to educate himself, understanding that acceptance required effort and openness. In his personal life, Jonathan made small but meaningful gestures. He thanked Simone for her kindness, acknowledging her impact on his family. He advocated for more inclusive practices within his company, recognizing that leadership meant creating opportunities for others, not just exerting authority. Most importantly, Jonathan's attitude toward love transformed. He embraced a deeper, more compassionate love for Michael, one that celebrated his son's individuality rather than trying to mold him into someone else. This love was patient, accepting, and free from judgment. The process was not without struggle. Jonathan faced moments of doubt, frustration, and old habits resurfacing. But with each step, he grew stronger, more empathetic, and more connected to those he had once kept at a distance. By the end of this journey, Jonathan Reynolds had become more than a billionaire businessman. He had become a father who truly saw his son, a man who valued kindness over control, and a leader willing to change for the better. The Reynolds family was famous for their traditions: extravagant charity galas, exclusive business dinners, and high-profile social events where the elite mingled and deals were sealed. Jonathan Reynolds was the man behind much of the success, a billionaire with a commanding presence, used to control and perfection. But no event in his life had prepared him for the moment that would come one ordinary Friday night at the upscale restaurant where Simone worked. The restaurant was buzzing with the usual crowd of wealthy patrons and influential figures. Jonathan and Michael were regulars, and though Jonathan usually kept to himself, tonight something felt different. The atmosphere was thick with tension, an invisible undercurrent stirring beneath the polished surface. As Simone approached their table to take their order, Jonathan's eyes caught a troubling scene across the room. A man, a powerful client and longtime business associate of Jonathan's, was berating a young black kitchen staff member. The man's voice was loud and sharp, filled with contempt. His words were harsh and dripping with racial bias, aimed at humiliating the young worker in front of everyone. Most patrons glanced away, unwilling to get involved. Jonathan's first instinct was no different. He had always valued control and calm above all else, and confrontation was something he avoided. But then he looked at Michael. His son's face was serious, filled with hurt yet determination. Michael's growth, sparked by Simone's kindness weeks before, had given him a new strength that Jonathan could not ignore. Something inside Jonathan shifted. For the first time in a long while, he felt the call to act, not as a businessman protecting his image, but as a father and a man choosing what was right. Jonathan stood up, the room quieting instantly as all eyes turned toward him. He walked steadily over to the client, his voice calm but resolute. "That behavior is unacceptable," Jonathan said firmly. "We treat everyone with respect here, no matter their position or background." The client looked shocked, fumbling for a response. "Jonathan, this isn't the place." Jonathan held up a hand. "No, it is the place. Respect is not optional." The tension was palpable, but Jonathan's stance left no room for argument. The young kitchen worker looked up at Jonathan, eyes wide with relief and gratitude. Simone, standing nearby, smiled softly, pride shining through her exhaustion. This moment was more than a defense of a single employee. It was a declaration that Jonathan's values had changed. The man who had once been obsessed with control and appearances was now publicly standing against discrimination, standing up for kindness and dignity. Later that evening, back at the Reynolds mansion, Jonathan gathered his family. He spoke with unusual openness. He recounted the incident, not to boast, but to reflect on what it meant for him, Michael, and their future. He admitted how blind he had been, how his biases had shaped his actions and relationships. He spoke about Simone's influence, about the lessons his son had taught him without even trying. Jonathan made a bold announcement. His company would adopt new diversity and inclusion policies. They would invest in programs to support marginalized communities and foster an environment where everyone, regardless of race, ability, or background, had opportunities to thrive. Michael listened, a mixture of pride and hope glowing in his eyes. The boy who once felt invisible now found himself at the heart of a family committed to change. Simone's impact had spread far beyond the restaurant. Her kindness had sparked a transformation in the very core of the Reynolds empire. Change was not easy. Some board members and executives resisted, uncomfortable with the new direction. But Jonathan stood firm, drawing courage from the example of his son and Simone. Their resilience reminded him daily why this change mattered. Over the following months, the company's culture began to shift. Programs were introduced to hire more people from diverse backgrounds. Disability accommodations improved. Training on unconscious bias became mandatory. These were not just policies on paper but lived values that started to reshape the workplace. The Reynolds family grew closer as well. Jonathan's relationship with Michael blossomed into one of mutual respect and understanding. He began to see his son not through the lens of what he couldn't do but through the light of who he was, a brave, kind, and inspiring young man. Simone remained a beloved part of their lives. Jonathan invited her to company events as a guest, acknowledging her not just as an employee but as a partner in this new vision. Their friendship became a symbol of breaking down barriers. The dance that Michael led with Simone months earlier had set in motion a ripple effect, turning a simple act of kindness into a powerful force for change. Jonathan's transformation from a controlling billionaire to a compassionate leader showed that it's never too late to grow, to learn, and to choose love over fear. This story, of a father standing up for his son and the waitress who changed his family, became an inspiration beyond their circle. It was a reminder that courage and kindness can break down walls built by prejudice, and that true power lies in empathy and acceptance. Jonathan Reynolds's life would never be the same. Through reflection, humility, and bold action, he had opened the door to a future filled with hope. For Michael, for Simone, for his family, and for the world they influenced. The transformation that began quietly on a dance floor, with Michael hesitantly leading Simone in a simple step, had now blossomed into a profound change in the Reynolds family's life. Weeks turned into months, and what once seemed a fragile moment of courage grew into a sturdy foundation of love, respect, and connection between Jonathan Reynolds and his son. Jonathan, the billionaire father known for his controlling nature and rigid expectations, found himself facing a new reality, one where power was not wielded through commands but expressed through understanding. Watching Michael grow more confident and joyful stirred feelings in Jonathan that he had never fully allowed himself to feel before. Their relationship began to change in ways both small and monumental. Where once Jonathan's conversations with Michael were filled with impatience or silent frustration, now they were marked by patience and openness. Jonathan learned to listen without interruption, to celebrate Michael's unique perspectives, and to acknowledge the struggles his son faced without judgment. Michael, in turn, blossomed under his father's newfound acceptance. The boy who once felt isolated and misunderstood began to speak up, sharing his thoughts and feelings with ease. He took more initiative in family conversations and activities, buoyed by the knowledge that his father believed in him. Their bond deepened, moving beyond the typical roles of father and son into something more collaborative and heart-centered. Central to this transformation was the continued presence of Simone, the black waitress whose kindness had first sparked this change. Simone's patient, genuine care extended far beyond the walls of the restaurant. She became a steady friend and mentor to Michael and a bridge of understanding for Jonathan. Simone's resilience and warmth had challenged Jonathan's long-held prejudices. Where he had once seen differences as deficiencies, Simone showed him the strength found in diversity, kindness, and courage. Her example helped Jonathan to soften, to confront uncomfortable truths about his biases, and to embrace a more inclusive worldview. At home, Simone was welcomed as part of the Reynolds family. She attended family dinners, celebrated birthdays, and shared quiet moments with Michael, encouraging him and standing by his side. Jonathan often found himself grateful for her presence, knowing that her influence had opened doors he never thought possible. The ripple effect of this personal transformation soon spread into Jonathan's professional world. Determined to align his business practices with his evolving values, Jonathan launched a series of initiatives within his company. He championed diversity hiring practices, created mentorship programs for people with disabilities, and implemented training sessions on unconscious bias and inclusion. His leadership style changed profoundly. He moved away from command and control management toward fostering collaboration and empathy among his team. Employees noticed the shift, morale improved, and the company began to attract talent from previously marginalized communities. Jonathan's company became a model for how business success and social responsibility could go hand in hand. Beyond the walls of his company, Jonathan invested in community programs that supported families with disabled children and organizations advocating for racial equality. He used his influence and resources to amplify voices that had long been ignored. Local newspapers and media began to tell the story of a businessman who had undergone a remarkable change, one sparked by the simple yet powerful moment of his son leading a dance. At home, the family thrived in this new atmosphere of acceptance and love. Michael's self-esteem soared. He engaged more in social activities and became an advocate for others with disabilities. Jonathan and Michael shared quiet evenings filled with laughter, storytelling, and dreams about the future. Their relationship, once strained, was now a source of joy and inspiration. Simone's story also inspired those around her. Her strength in the face of adversity and her generosity of spirit encouraged others in the restaurant and the community to reconsider their own biases and to embrace kindness as a transformative force. She became a symbol of hope and change, a reminder that empathy could break down the toughest walls. In reflecting on this journey, Jonathan realized that the greatest lesson he had learned was the power of humility. True leadership, he understood now, was not about domination but about connection, about seeing the humanity in others and allowing that vision to shape every decision. His heart had been softened not by strategy or force, but by the simple, courageous acts of his son and Simone. The story of Jonathan, Michael, and Simone stands as a testament to the fact that transformation is always possible. Even the most deeply ingrained beliefs can be challenged and changed by love, courage, and kindness. What began as a hesitant dance step became a movement toward a better, more compassionate world. And so, the Reynolds family walked forward together, not just as individuals, but as a united force for good. Their lives, forever changed, echoed a timeless truth, that empathy and acceptance have the power to heal, to unite, and to inspire generations. As we reach the end of this incredible journey, it's important to pause and reflect on what truly lies at the heart of this story. The tale of Jonathan, Michael, and Simone is not just about one family or one night in a restaurant. It is about something much bigger: the power of empathy, the courage to break stereotypes, and the unstoppable force of kindness. Empathy is often called the greatest human gift. It allows us to step beyond our own experiences and see the world through another person's eyes. Jonathan Reynolds, a man defined by control, wealth, and status, had lived a life filled with rigid expectations and judgments. His worldview was shaped by assumptions about disability, about race, about social class. But it was the quiet, persistent kindness of Simone and the brave spirit of Michael that slowly, yet powerfully, opened his heart. This story teaches us that empathy is not automatic. It is a choice. It asks us to pause our busy lives, to listen deeply, and to recognize the humanity in everyone we meet. When Jonathan finally allowed himself to feel empathy, his whole life changed. He saw Michael not as a challenge or a disappointment, but as a source of inspiration. He saw Simone not as a waitress or an outsider, but as a courageous and kind soul who could teach him what true strength looked like. Breaking stereotypes is another vital lesson here. Stereotypes create invisible prisons, confining people to narrow, unfair roles based on race, ability, or background. These false beliefs divide us and block our ability to connect. Jonathan's biases once blinded him to the rich potential in Michael and Simone. But by breaking free from these stereotypes, he discovered a new way of seeing, one that embraced differences as strengths. This transformation reminds us all to question our own assumptions. Who do we overlook or judge unfairly? What biases shape our thoughts and actions? The path to a more compassionate, just world begins when we recognize these barriers and choose to tear them down. At the heart of this story is kindness, a simple yet revolutionary force. Simone's kindness, shown in small acts like encouraging Michael to lead a dance step, was a spark that ignited change. It proves that kindness is never wasted. Every gentle word, every patient smile, every moment of support can create ripples that extend far beyond what we see. Kindness takes courage, especially when facing prejudice or resistance. Simone's courage inspired Jonathan to confront his own prejudices and to become a better man. Her example shows us that being kind is also an act of strength. It requires bravery to stand up for others, to offer compassion when it's easier to turn away. To you watching this story unfold, here is the call to action. Let this story be more than just inspiration. Let it move you to act. Look around in your own life, your family, your workplace, your community. Who might be longing for empathy? Who might need you to break a stereotype, to stand beside them, or to offer a simple act of kindness? Challenge yourself to listen more deeply. Notice people who might feel invisible or marginalized. Step outside your comfort zone to support someone who is different from you. And when you see injustice or cruelty, speak up. Stand strong, just as Jonathan did when he defended Simone and his son. Change starts with each of us, in small everyday choices. Imagine if everyone chose empathy over judgment, kindness over indifference. Imagine the world we could build, a world where everyone feels valued, where differences are celebrated, and where love and respect guide us. Jonathan's story shows us that no matter how set in our ways we are, transformation is always possible. It's never too late to change our hearts, to learn, and to grow. By choosing empathy and kindness, we not only change ourselves, but we change the world around us. So as you go forward, carry this message with you. Let empathy be your guide, break down the walls of stereotype wherever you find them, and remember that kindness is one of the most powerful forces for good in the world. Because at the end of the day, it is not wealth, power, or status that define us. It is the compassion we show and the love we share. Thank you for watching, and may this story inspire you to lead with your heart every day.